Yo, it's Guido coming at you with a Tactics Talk. Welcome back and thanks for tuning in. We have today Gangstar in his standard B Tier 9 Italian medium auto-loading tank with the Italian autoloader, and he is here on, what is this place called? It's called Westfield. Now, Gangstar's a pretty good player. Actually, he's a great player. He sent this in. He's active on the forum on NA quite a bit as well. Likes to mix it up a little bit with people on the forum, but he sent me this replay and he said, hey, let me pause it here for a moment. Had a pretty good game, but I felt like maybe we could have won this one, and I'm just wondering if you want to put another set of eyes on it and see if there was something I could do. So I watched this a couple times, and I think there are a couple things we can talk about. Gangstar ends up having a pretty darn good game. I'm not going to be able to put my thumb on any one thing where I can go, you know what, Gangstar, you screwed this up by doing X, Y, or Z. And a lot of times that's what you find with good players. It's all the little decisions that build on each other. And maybe I can give him a couple places where he could have diverged from what he was doing and potentially pulled this one out. So initially he's going to come up to this spot. So we're going to talk about initial positioning right off. I don't like this spot. I know that a lot of players do, a lot of good players do. I know that there are a lot of players that are better than me that absolutely kick rear on this spot. But I will say that one thing about this spot is it relies heavily on your team to get you spots to shoot at. And there was one missed shot right there. That hurt a little bit. Now RNG has a vote every time you take a shot, so that's not necessarily anything Gangstar could have automatically done right there. I think we're going to take a shot. I think he's waiting for the second one to reload. Not a bad idea, actually, if that guy stays lit the whole time. I think maybe you could have used a little more lead fire right there, and maybe even just shot in the blind at that guy, but you're going to end up finding the 1390 anyway. And again, I think he's waiting for the reload. This is a pretty good job by him thinking about, hey, why don't I just wait till that second one gets reloaded, and then I have two shots pop, pop, and I don't have to go to that really long reload. So back to this spot. I'm just going to pause the action for just a minute. What does this spot allow you to do? Naturally, I can't get my zoom out going. It allows you to get back up into the town. We go down to the mini-map here. We'll go ahead and plus this out and take a moment to talk about this. This spot allows you to flex up into the town, so if they filter quite a few tanks in there, which is not a great idea, but if they do, you can really kind of dominate them by appearing out of nowhere and coming in here. Obviously, you've got all the shots down here into the southeast, and you can, if you have to, flex up to the north spot. Now, let's talk about that for just a minute, because I've said a couple times I don't like this spot necessarily as an initial spot. What do I like? I like going up here. I like making sure that this part of the map is won. Once you own this, you own all this high ground. You can filter into the town. You can get down to the bottom where he is now. Start working on these guys down in the south. All options are open once you win this spot. You lose the northwest, many options are closed, and you're forced onto your back foot. Now you get crossfires, or you're falling back onto this back edge and attempting to stop them from coming down. And your back is exposed to crossfire. A push down here can work, but it has to be fast. What's happening here is we have another stagnated fight going on down in the southeast corner, which is pretty standard. I expect that nearly every game, which is why even if I spawn down on the bottom and I've got a fast tank like a standard B, I would go up here. Put my gun in the most important spot. The obvious counters to that are the standard B is a relatively soft tank. It takes you a while to get up there. I'm good at playing at this point, and I can farm damage as guys are exposing themselves. Noted, got it. But I think the first thing I would say, Gangstar, at least for me, I would have taken my tank up here and tried to help my team win this northwest as what I consider the critical terrain, instead of relying on my team down here to get me lights and to either win up here and hold down here or win both, which is really not what ends up happening here. Now he's playing it smartly, moving around here a little bit. The other problem with the spot he's at is if somebody YOLOs across and lights you up, you can really take a lot of aggro from the guys down there in the southeast. So then we see that we're starting to lose at the north, and we react, and maybe just a little late. And I say a little late because it looks a little late, but I don't know if you'd have been on time, even if you'd have started maybe 30, 40 seconds a minute ago. Unless you were up there helping them, I don't think these guys had much of a chance. They just did not have enough tanks up there, and now you just see a lone T95 FV 4201, and the rest of them have been absolutely massacred. So now we're falling back. And you know, the inevitable counter to what I've been saying about going up there is people are going to say, well, Guido, look at them. They got massacred. Even had Gang been up there, more than likely they get pushed out of that spot, and that may well be. But we won't know because he wasn't there. Still, this is what we've got, so Gang's going to flux over here. I thought this was a fine decision to go back over here. This is really all you've got, like I mentioned earlier. We're going to come back here and use these bushes to pretty good effect. We try to drive off these rocks and survive that without any hit points damage. I'd have never managed that. I'd have half killed myself trying to do that one. Nicely done. We've got good depression on this tank. We've got 3 shots to drop down range. But this is a bummer. We're really getting pushed. 2 tier 10s. Both their tier 10s or 2 of their tier 10s are coming in here. E100. I don't know, I might have been a little more aggressive trying to get shots into the E100. That one did get you spotted, so that's wise not to attempt a shot, and that's unfortunate. The side of the E75 turret's not turned quite enough, or maybe just missed. I'm not really sure what happened there. That 40T looks like he's up on top of that hill. You might have a shot on that guy. Nah, I can't get a highlight on him, so maybe not. Again, waiting for the reloads. Just waiting for the right opportunity. The E75 probably doesn't see you. He gets hit and stunned. This is the time to go when he's stunned. Yeah, get up there and get under his front. Oh, that's unlucky. Nice aim down in there. Can't quite get to it, but he gets a shot into it. And down goes the E75. And things are looking actually pretty good. So they've recovered from that initial loss up there in the northwest. They fell back, and they took out the unwise enemy pushing in. Now, the IS-7's still trolling around. He's a problem. The other tier 10's down in the south with a Pantera. But it looks like Gang's team is pretty well together. But let's see what happens here. IS-7 pushes over into town. Get a shot into him. Another shot, which is only a crit damage. We got him tracked, and hopefully our guys can shoot. But look what's going on in the south. They're kind of busy. They're down there fighting these guys. They're all stacked up. They're probably taking shots from across, from the Lorraine, the Sioux, maybe even the Progetto. Not the Progetto, but the IS-7, if he's got a shot. The poor 95-201 is on the back edge, so he's exposed to shots. And the K91 is, I'm not really sure why, but he's falling back and running off. And the IS-7 is now pulling back. So not a lot of great options here. I started thinking right here, Gangstar, one of your options may have been to try to cross over here and come up this edge and see if you can't get up in here and start working whichever of these guys might be hanging out above here. And if there's nothing up here, then filter back towards the town, or at least use this high ground to start shooting into town. Was one option I thought right there. You really feel like you're on your back foot based on what's been happening, but unfortunately your 2 Lorraines are in big trouble now as the K91 has run off. And he may have been taking fire from the side and decided he didn't want to get killed up on that hill. The 2 Lorraines are completely exposed. They're on the back edge of that little bump right there. There's no real trees right there. Every time they get lit, they're going to take fire. And I don't know what their hit point situation is, but they're not getting aggressive, so it must not be great. There's a 704 unspotted. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of their tanks, which means 2 are unspotted. What else is unspotted? The Scorpion? Looks like the Scorpion as well. So you do have to be careful. You don't want to run into both those TDs. Likely a 40T and a 101. There goes one of the 40Ts. So the IS-7 does have shots on those guys, and he's not being pressed or killed. Finally, he goes down. And that south area, which looked like a pretty good win, is now in big trouble with just a Lorraine 40T. The K91 has fallen back into the town, and now we got Gang's going to go ahead and move up towards the north. And this is a good move right here. You find this guy. You notice that he's running. Pay attention to this, people. He came up there, he checked him out. As soon as he saw the direction and the speed that guy was going, he knew right away that he was running away from him. He's a casemate TD, so he just went right around and killed him off before he could spin. And that was a nice job. All right, so let's stop it right here. Because unfortunately, your FV4201 died, and now they've got a bit of a lead. Good news is you have artillery. They don't, so you don't have to worry too much about getting thumped behind buildings. 3 of their tanks are down in the south. That leaves the 704 and the Scorpion unaccounted for. And we're headed up here, which is something I probably would have done a bit earlier, like I discussed a little bit earlier there. So another probably checkpoint where maybe things could have gone a little better if you'd have moved up this way just a bit sooner, while you still had some some more beef around. Lorraine's falling back. The K91's there, but now you're split to the wind. The reason I mention that is you're going to continue to do that. Now, I think you do need to clear this high area and just see if you can't catch the Scorpion or the 704 driving around up here in the open, circle them and kill them. You do have to be careful about highlighting yourself on this ridge. Nice job coming a little lower so you don't show yourself to the standard TD camping spots in the back there. Very possible there's one still sitting there. If you haven't seen a TD this long, then they're probably a fairly hard camping kind of guy or gal. Just take a quick peek, see what he did there. He knows that that's the TD spot, but he doesn't completely expose himself. Backs up to see if 6th Sense goes off. It doesn't, and then he moves forward. That is a de facto spotting device. I think most people know that, but basically, you look at it and go, I know the 40T, the Pantera, and the Progetto are lit. I pop over here and get lit. That's probably one of the other two that are unlit. Now, the Pantera spots an old one. God knows where he's gone. He could be just about anywhere. So it is possible it's one of the other guys if you get lit right there, but it is more likely to be one of the TDs. Now, this is probably one of the biggest things I disagree with. I see what you're doing here. You're trying to find somebody to kill, but you're outnumbered and you're spread across the map, and your K91 doesn't have many hit points. And now he gets the Lorraine lit. Lorraine's over there, but you can't really go screaming across there because you know there's probably a TD sitting in these bushes here. Now, I like the aggression, but I think you might be more of a defensive kind of tank right now. Lorraine falls all the way back, unfortunately. Now, nobody has any real support on each other. Not really. The K91 can kind of support the Lorraine, but actually because of the bridge and the terrain and the buildings, there's nothing he can do if somebody jumps the Lorraine. He doesn't really have shots. You can shoot the K90 or crossfire to the K91, but they really have to come up and over the edge and into the buildings or this flat area to help him. If they just start poking here with depression, there's not much you can do. He has some crossfire for you if you get pushed, which is good, but that's really the only big one that's helping each other. And you have eyes across a large part of the map, but the problem right now is you don't really need that much of the map with only 3 tanks. So you need to be somewhere where you could support these guys. For me, I think it's this hill maybe right here, or even further back and try to help the 40T. But let's see how this thing pans out. You're being very careful, but you are alone over here, largely. And now I see you coming back across. You find the 704, and now we're kind of bumming because we're cut out in the middle. The 40T just got killed by their 40T. The K91's attempting to deal with him, and now we're messing with the 704, and there's another tank. So at this point right here with that 704, he's not very fast. I'd have bailed out of that situation and tried to head down here. I might have even taken the chance of going through the slow area and through the buildings and get my butt over here and help clean these guys up because I know that's where they are. Right now it's 2 1v1s with extra tanks around, and there's only 2 of you as far as tanks go. So I'd have bailed out of this thing. You're clicking on for artillery, but I think artillery's probably really fixated on the other 2 tanks. K91 does a nice job, whether he got helped by Artie or just killed the 40T, that's not bad. But look at him, he's on the front edge of that hill trying to get away. And now the Progetto 65 shows up and takes him down. And it's pretty much all over but the shouting right here. I'm kind of surprised on this one. You double bush, but you're close enough, I guess, that he ends up getting a spot on you. Yep. And we're going to take a hammer. Yep, we got hammered. One more shot into him. Fix that. Good plan. And head on out. And we got a lot of trouble here. So we'll just watch this play out for the rest of it. Right now it would take pretty much a miracle to win. I mean, it's not that it's impossible. He does a pretty nice job for the rest of the game. But we'll just talk about the general overall meta and the idea of it. There goes the artillery. Initially, man, I really think, and I get a lot of pushback on this. People have different opinions, and that's all fine. You asked me what I thought, so I'll give it to you. That northwest fight, the northwest brawl, is really the place to be. And it may have been that you got in there and lost anyway because you died with the rest of them. But I think as good a player as you are, there was definitely a possibility of you getting in there and adding your gun to that fight and maybe turning that fight a bit and even winning it, or at least not losing it as bad and giving the rest of your team a bit of a chance. I don't like that farming position. I realize and understand that some players do a really nice job on it, and you can rack up some serious damage sitting on that front edge of that hill by the city. So I get it. I've seen it. I understand it. I just don't like it. It just relies way too much on your team. And I try not to rely too much on my team when I make my general plans. I try to go places where my gun will make the biggest difference to help the cascade begin, so that later on in the game, later on in the match, my team has more of an advantage. Vice, going to a place where I know I can farm if things work out well, but I sort of rely on my team to be halfway competent and get me the spots and help me out. Now, that being said, I'll beat this spot to death. If you are going to go there and your team does well and they give you some farming spots, you have to flex very quickly out of there when things dry up or you notice the situation happening. That's where I mentioned, hey, I probably would have moved up north a little bit faster to help my team up there. Once I saw I got a few shots of those guys crossing, more than likely they know you're there. They're not going to expose themselves as much. And the longer you sat there, the less your gun was barking. So maybe after those first 3 or 4 shots, just zing right up into the northwest and help those guys up there. End game, I'd have tried to stay a little closer to some of my tanks there. It was not a great situation. I understood what you were doing. You were out there looking for guys who were being unaware. Maybe take down a few TDs and then fold back later. Unfortunately, your 2 guys died alone because neither one of them had any kind of support or crossfire with each other right there, and ended up dying. Now, you were definitely on your back foot at the end of the game without making excuses for you or anyone else there, but that really was the situation. It looked like you were trying to do the best with what you could. Overall, dude, you got 6,003 damage. That's pretty dang good in any tank, even especially a tier 9 and a middle tier with 3 tier 10s running around. Really nicely done. But I think you realize as well as I do and everybody else that towards the end, a lot of that damage was more or less what we call useless damage. You were just, I'll say, padding. It's not like you went out intending to pad, but you were taking shots that you had end game against campers that were 704s that had been hanging out in the same spot the whole game. But good on you. You got 6,003 out of a loss. Not too bad, man. Those are my thoughts. Some general meta considerations, some things right there. There's nothing really there that I could put my thumb on and say, had you done X, you would have won. That's usually the case with very good players in games like this. But a couple thoughts of mine out there on where maybe you could have turned this thing around. All right, man. Thanks for sending in. I do appreciate it. And for everybody else, we will see you.